Hi, everybody. So in this video, we're going to introduce you to the ideas of efficiency and markets and something that's related called surplus. So let's get started. So efficiency is a pretty simple or straightforward idea, but there's a lot of little moving parts to it. It just basically means a situation in which no alternative transaction, and I'm going to abbreviate these, but you can write them out, no alternative transaction exists that would make someone better off without making someone else, making another, worse. Another person or another party worse off. Now, the last time I kind of talked about something related to this, it was with the PPC. So you had a situation where you could make capital goods, or you could make consumer goods, and you could make one or the other, right? And any point along the curve was efficient. And that's the idea that, if you're at point A, if you're at that point, you cannot make someone better off, right, by allocating more towards consumer goods without giving up something else, right? Without giving up some capital goods, without making someone else worse off. So if you're down here, though, right, at I, you could, right? You could go all the way over to point A from I, and you could increase the amount of capital goods you're getting without giving up any additional consumer goods. So point I is inefficient. That's all it means. It just means you could make someone better off without making someone else worse off. And so we call that inefficiency because you're kind of leaving stuff on the table, right? But if you're at point A, you can't make anybody better off. You can't make any alternative transaction without making something else worse off or giving something else up. Now, markets are really good at producing efficient outcomes. They don't always. They're mostly good at it. In units 4 and 5 of this class, we're going to look at when they don't. But in short, they allocate consumption to the buyers who most value a product. And now sometimes that conflicts with our ideas of fairness or justice, but they're very good at saying, well, if you value it the most and you're willing and able to pay for it the most, then you get it. That's how markets ensure efficiency or consumption. They also allocate sales to sellers who are really efficient and who most value the sale. And how do they do that? Well, the people who can produce at the lowest cost always get the sale, and the people who have really high costs don't get the sale. So that's kind of what number 2 on that says. Markets ensure that no transactions occur that aren't mutually beneficial. So in an efficient market, there aren't any transactions where like one person is not doing very well and the other person's doing right. And fourth, it ensures that all of the possible mutually beneficial transactions that could occur are occurring. So it makes sure that everybody who wants to buy it and is willing and able to pay a price higher than the cost of producing it, those sellers and those buyers connect. So it matches those people. Now, inefficiency is when you don't have some of those things happening. It's the idea that maybe not all of the mutually beneficial transactions are occurring. And one of the ways that we can quantify inefficiency is by measuring the value of those transactions. So for example, if you had a situation where somebody was willing to pay $8 for a product and somebody was able to produce it for $3, well, they should meet, right? They should transact. This person's willing to pay 8, this person produces for 3, they should be able to find a mutually agreeable term of trade. However, if that transaction doesn't happen for some reason, then we can calculate the lost value. And we just say, well, the difference between those two, the 8 minus the 3 is $5. So we lost $5 of social benefit is kind of a way to think about it. And we call that deadweight loss. So it's a fancy name for the lost value of the transactions that didn't occur. And we'll kind of explore it more later. We're going to get really big friends with it. Now, surplus is a related concept that allows us to think about deadweight loss in a little easier way. This is the measurement. It measures the benefit of buyers and sellers from transactions. So this is kind of a way of saying, well, how much enjoyment and use and benefit did you get from the transaction? And if we add up the benefit of the buyer and we add up the benefit that the producer got, and we add them together, we get what's called total surplus. I know, I'm careful now, that's pretty complicated stuff. So if you add consumer and consumer surplus, right, and so I just abbreviate CS plus PS for producer surplus equals total surplus. What a concept, right? Now, this is where maybe it might help you to think about these things. I've typed these out for you. Consumer surplus is actually technically the difference between the expected benefit that you would get from something and what you actually paid. So if you remember way back, we did a true-false list in one of the first practice problems, and I said, you get what you pay for. And I said, that's false, actually, and here's why. So think about, I challenge you right now, think about the last thing you bought and exactly how much you paid for it. I know that that's a little hard to do, right? So I'll give you a second, think about it, get it in your head, what you bought and exactly how much you paid. This was the last thing I bought. It was a 6-pack of Diet Coke for $3.33. Now, I paid $3.33. I was probably willing to pay $4.33, right? I'm just kind of pulling that number out, but I'd probably pay $4.33. There's some maximum value that I wouldn't pay more than, but we'll say it's $4.33. And then I'm like, nah, no more, no, too expensive. So I am getting $4.33 worth of enjoyment out of my Diet Coke, but I only paid $3.33. See, the difference here is I didn't get what I paid for. I got more, because otherwise you probably wouldn't engage in transactions. If you were like, gosh, I am like right on the edge, you're probably not going to transact, right? You know, most of the time when you buy stuff, you're willing to pay maybe 10 cents or 5 cents or even $1 more. And that's your consumer surplus. If you add up all of the different consumers that are they're all of the individual surpluses, then you get the consumer surplus in total, right? The same idea applies for producers. For them, though, they have like an absolute minimum that they'd be willing to sell for. And their minimum is actually just their cost of producing it. So we would say that, you know, their expected benefit is like, you know, their cost, like they would be willing to do it for their cost and then they would break even. But the actual price they earn is something higher. Another one of those true false statements that we looked at was that when someone makes an economic gain, someone else loses. And that's false, right? Obviously, it's true right here. I benefited $1 from buying all of these Diet Cokes, and Walmart benefited from, I don't know, whatever their cost was of providing it to me. So we both win. That's the beauty of markets. Now, we have a graph to illustrate this idea, because it's economics, everything's a graph. This one is consumer surplus. And so I'm going to graph it here for you, quantity and price, and we need demand and supply. And then what we do is we find the price, the equilibrium price, we'll say P star or PE or whatever, and then this area up here is the consumer surplus. It's an area defined by, and this is very important, by the price the buyers paid up to the demand curve, right? So it's that area. So the demand curve could actually be a curve, and you could find the area underneath it using calculus, and that's the amount of consumer surplus. And with this graph, I've kind of highlighted the same thing, but I've even used some numbers. And you could, if we sat down, you could calculate what's the total consumer surplus fairly easily, right? 12 minus 5 is 7. That's the height of the triangle. Times 4, that's the base. So 7 times 4 is 28. Times 1/2 is 14. So the total consumer surplus is 14. What about this quantity 2? Well, what's the per unit? Well, it's the difference between 5 and 7, so 2. So that's how we do consumer surplus, right? It's not too difficult, I hope. Now, producer surplus, exactly the same idea, but for them, demand, supply, and it's the price, right, that they received, price the sellers earned is another way to say it, price the sellers earned down to the supply curve. So I should probably just kind of in there, right? So it's this supply curve and then the price that they earned. That's producer surplus. So we should probably label those or else we'll forget. Now, just like that other one, 5 minus 1 is 4. That's the height of the triangle. Times 4 is 16. Divided by 2 is 8. So in that picture right below me, the total producer surplus is 8. The per unit at quantity 2, hopefully you can do that one, 5 minus 3 is 2. All right, so hopefully that's helped you. I'll see you next time. Bye now.